Computer gurus say there is a place they can go to dig up some of the internet's oldest websites and visit chat rooms you cannot access through a normal Google search.
However, Chattanooga police say that part of the internet can also be a crime-ridden place that many people don't even know exists. News Channel 9's Hannah Lawrence explains what you need to know about the deep and dark web and what parents should do so their kids avoid it at all costs.
The internet is often compared to an iceberg. Let me show you the parts here. The top represents the information you would get through something like a Google search. However, you're only seeing a very small percentage of what's out there. The rest of the iceberg and the biggest portion represents the deep web. It contains all of the information you can't see without downloading a special browser. It's also where police say a lot of criminals have begun to traffic drugs, guns, and people. Police call that part of the deep web the dark web.
It can be an ugly place, but so can the world.
Jake Padgett says he began to surf the internet at 13 years old.
I'm no monster. I thought that, this is interesting.
By 18, he discovered the dark web.
As soon as I saw it and I saw how bad it actually was, I was like, I can't tell anybody about this. Nobody needs to know this is real.
Now, 8 years later, he says the amount of crime being committed here has gotten out of control, and it's time to warn people, especially parents.
There are websites where you play these mind games, and if you're wrong, they actually hurt someone in real life. There is stuff like that happens, and they videotape it so you can see it, and it's part of a game.
Padgett says the dark web allows people to be easily trafficked for those games and sexual exploitation.
But that's what you get. You get unfiltered humanity.
We talked to a Chattanooga police officer whose job is to track human traffickers online. He then helps carry out dangerous operations, and for that reason, we're protecting his identity.
Kids are being trafficked in Chattanooga. It's not just, located maybe what some people might call the bad part of town. It's all over the city of Chattanooga. So yeah, it's here.
This officer says catching criminals has changed a lot in the last 15 years.
When I first started doing this kind of role, I would be able to find human trafficking advertising in the phone book, in the newspapers, going out into the community. It's all pretty much internet-based now.
Padgett showed us Tor. It's one of the browsers you can download similar to Chrome or Firefox. However, Tor allows someone to surf the deep web anonymously.
You're required to be anonymized before you can see these types of things. That's what the Onion router does. And as you can see, it's a .onion up in the URL. That lets you know that you are on the deep web and not on the surface web.
The browser's website says Tor was originally developed for the U.S. Navy in an effort to keep government communications out of the public eye. Now police say human traffickers are using browsers like it to hide.
Yeah, a lot of people are starting to go that route. Even with the going to the deep web, it's very anonymous down there. It's a little bit harder tracking those people.
The officer we talked to says traffickers often meet targets over the internet. The #1 red flag he says parents can look for
is a child's reluctance to hand over a device, or being upset that their parents are trying to monitor what they're up to.
Padgett considers himself a hacktivist, which is a computer-savvy person who uses the internet anonymously while fighting for justice, especially for those sold into slavery.
I've not broken the law. I just don't care to have everyone know what I do. That's very different, and that's a very important distinction.
I could think of legitimate reasons why I would go to the deep web. Now, when we start talking about the dark net or the dark web where all these criminal acts are taking place, then I can't think of a real good reason.
If you commit or post or do anything of that nature, we will find you. And we will expose you, and we will call your local police and say, hey, here's his address. Go get him.
We told you the first warning sign parents who want to protect their child from bad parts of the dark web can look for. But what else can you do? There's a specific kind of app you also need to know about. I'll have that part of the story coming up at 6. Hannah Lawrence, News Channel 9.
And the police officer says he's recently noticed a recent trend of Chattanooga gang members participating in the human trafficking industry online. Well, an officer in Chattanooga's Criminal Intelligence Unit says he cannot think of a reason anyone, especially a child, who would need to access the dark web.
News Channel 9's Hannah Lawrence tells us how you can protect your child. Hannah.
Kim Calvin, the internet is sometimes compared to an iceberg. The top is the surface web and what you see in a normal Google search. The bottom of the iceberg represents what you don't see on the deep web. Parts of the dark web are also located here, and that's why police say you need to be watching where your children go. Jake Padgett says his parents didn't completely understand his interest in computers when it took off around age 13.
Deep web is used a lot for communication, and when I first found it several years ago, that was probably what I used it for, just to talk to people.
At 18, Padgett says he discovered the part of the deep web called the dark web. There, he says, you'll find things no one, especially children, should ever see.
There's virtual Russian roulette and stuff like that, where they actually have people against their will playing Russian roulette, and you're betting on your guy. Of course, I've never done that. I've seen it, but those things exist.
We talked to a Chattanooga police officer who tracks dangerous online criminals. For that reason, we're protecting his identity.
The deep web, it's not accessed through normal means, such as like Google. You'd have to use other browsers to get there. It's more of like a Google search on steroids.
Padgett is now in his mid-20s and says there's an even bigger gap in what today's kids know about the internet compared to their parents.
With that huge gap now between understanding of parents and children of technology, it's really, really important that parents talk to their kids about what they might encounter on the internet and what that might mean.
The officer we talked to pointed out some red flags for parents to look for.
The first thing I would say is a child's reluctance to hand over a device, or being upset that their parents are trying to monitor what they're up to.
He says many human traffickers will set up dates or meetings with victims over the internet and instead take them and sell them into slavery. For that reason, he says you need to be able to see how your child is communicating.
And second would be certain applications where when you send a message, it disappears. And if they're using apps such as those, I would definitely be worried about those.
As the owner of a business that fixes computers, Padgett says exploring the internet made him who he is today. He thinks parents need to avoid telling children where not to go on the internet and instead help them understand its dangers. Kim.
Anna, thank you very much for that report. Interesting information there. Well, the police officer we talked to says he's recently noticed a recent trend of Chattanooga gang members participating in the human trafficking online industry.